Welcome back. It's been quite a while since I've done one of these magazine flick-throughs, so I thought I'd go and do another one. So we're now on March 1994, and we're going to have a look at a copy of Edge, which is all about 3D. As you can see by the cover, it's showcasing Ridge Racer, and there's a comment here saying that Namco's stunning Ridge Racer coin-up shows what the latest hardware can do, and next year you'll be playing on Sony's PSX home console. And I think this really was a good thing in that you're getting these really good 3D arcade games, and then with the PlayStation and the Saturn they're coming to the home. And I think that's why they sold. So I think that the key thing here is F&V was a big deal, but it wasn't really the experience you got in the arcades. But I think this was it. This is what I think sold it to a lot of people. Sold this next generation. So as per usual, they're covering SNES, Amiga CD32, Mega Drive PC, CDI PC Engine, Neo Geo 3DO Jaguar. Yeah, I think that's the same as last month. So this is issue 6 as well. And it cost £3 back in the day. Yeah, the video game is dead. Long live the game video. Yeah, so they're saying about gameplay taking a big change, or making a big change rather. Yeah, Rebel Assault, Microcosm, Voyeur, 7th Guest. Yeah, so that's all about F&V again. So it still hasn't quite gone away. Yeah, this is an interesting thing. They're talking about 3D, about how will your 8-bit and 16-bit games translate into 3D. And it's interesting to see the way they thought Sonic would go, in that it would be, you know, side scrolling but 3D, a little bit like Sonic Generations in a way. But that didn't happen. We got Sonic Adventure, which was like third person over the shoulder, which some people liked, some people didn't. So what have we got? Doom is obviously big at this point, and that looks like, is that Alone in the Dark? And an interview with Archer McLean. That'll be interesting. He was at, wasn't Replay, it was the other one, Revival, a couple of years back. Really interesting talk. Winter CDS. Yeah, 94. I remember seeing these screenshots back in the day. I don't think it was Edge that I read. It might have been Mean Machines or CBG. But seeing Daytona for the first time, I mean, these screenshots are a bit grainy. They're not, well, washed out as well. They're not the best. That's probably been on some, if you remember back in the day, you used to get these big screens, but they were really lots of smaller ones, and you had these horrible dividers in the middle. I think these have been filmed off one of those. But it's really showing how Daytona looks a lot better than Virtua Racing and what we've seen before. You've got Virtua Fighter, Winged Dragon, that'll be Panzer Dragoon. So yeah, interesting stuff coming. You got the CDX, or Multi-Mega as it was known over here. Stunt Race Effects. Yeah, Nintendo at this point were really pushing their current technology, whereas Sega and Sony were all about this next generation. Nintendo, I think, because they'd been burnt by the CD technology, were really pushing what could be done with the current hardware. And I suppose the Super FX was a good example of very cheaply upgrading it. But Super Metroid as well, really classic game. It's just using the stock Super Nintendo, no extra hardware, and it's a fantastic game. Really, really good. So Sega's president Tom Kalinske playing Virtua Racing. What's this? There's a thing, I don't know if it comes out very well. It looks like that's a Mega Drive 2. I wonder if it's a prototype for the 32X, but it's a different shape. It looks a lot bigger. It looks like a smaller Mega Drive 2 on top of a Mega Drive 2. 3DO. Yeah. So they're saying that, yeah, not the most attractive piece of kit, but it was there. Yeah. I don't know, I think by the time that the PlayStation was announced and the Saturn was announced, the 3DO, Jaguar, CDI, even the CD32, the days were numbered. Pentium, yeah. So I remember Magic Carpet being one of the first games that really needed a Pentium. I think you could probably play it on a 486, just wasn't as smooth. Yeah. So they're talking about the Power PC. So these are your PC Mac wars back then. Yeah, where is it? Costing £100,000. That'll be virtual reality. Developers see Sony PSX, which is your PlayStation 1. This dinosaur was on one of the cover discs. It might have been the first one that came out in the UK. I remember that being really impressive, but it's only rendering the dinosaur, not any background, so they could put all the polygons in one place. And there's a racing game here which I don't know what that was. Was that a prototype of what became Gran Turismo? Maybe, not sure. This looks interesting. What's this? Oh, it's Total Eclipse on the 3DO. Yeah, that had a lot of FMV, but the 3D wasn't bad for the hardware. It did come out on the PlayStation and the Saturn, but certainly for 3DO, it was almost like on rails in a way. That the camera didn't rotate very much, but it looked alright. Zul's the first PC game to hit the arcade. So it's a 486 board which is going into the arcades. Yeah, I think this would become more and more common. I mean, certainly there were arcades based on the original Xbox hardware, which was more or less a PC inside. It was x86. Yeah, that intro looks like Zul 2. I don't think it is. I wonder if that was the AGA one. I can't really remember. Yeah, so it's got 256 colours. Never played the PC version of Zul. I only ever played the AGA original and then Zul 2 on the Jaguar, which both look really good. Yeah, so talking about using Laserdisc, there is a machine called the Laser. Is it the Laser Active? And you can put modules in them. One is like a Mega Drive module and one's a PC Engine module, and there are a couple of games that support that. A lot of them are on-rails shooters. Virtual reality will be... Yeah, I mean, this was a big deal at the time. I think the problem was, one was that you're strapping two CRT monitors to your head, which is never a good idea. And, well, small ones, but they're still CRTs, so they'll give you a headache. And the 3D hardware wasn't quite up to scratch. It was around just before... like PS1 Saturn quality 3D was around, so the virtuality machines were powered by, there were Amiga 3000s, which were not quite as good as that 32-bit generation. It's a shame, really, but you know, what could have happened with the Amiga, but we'll never know, because various things happened in the history and mistakes were made and the company went bust. So what's on the charts? Amiga, Cannon Fodder, Zul 2, Frontier, Championship Manager, Monkey Island on budget, Micro Machines, Settlers, Sensible Soccer. Yeah, some good games there. Yeah, it's saying there's a lot of movement in the charts. So Mega Drive, FIFA, yeah, FIFA. That was a big deal even back then. Sonic Spinball, I'm surprised to see that quite high. I wonder if a lot of people had that bought for Christmas and then realised it wasn't quite as good as they'd hoped for. Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat, F1, Sonic 2, Micro Machines, Super NES, Mario All-Stars, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Nigel Mansell, Mortal Kombat. Yeah, similar. Day of the Tentacle, Rebel Assault, they're good games. A lot of FMV, Seventh Guest, Dracula Unleashed, I think that was FMV as well. Dune, that was good. That's how you're supposed to use a CD. A lot of... Actually, did it have voice acting, or was that the Mega CD one? I think it must have been, because it's the PC CD-ROM. Yeah, it was an adventure game similar to Monkey Island, but it had a lot of detailed backgrounds and video and sound that played off the CD. It's been a while since I played that one. I think the one I played the most, I think it was probably the floppy disk version. PC, Frontier, Network QRAC. I remember having that. That was a good game. Monkey Island, Flight Simulator, Lemmings 2, B-Wing. B-Wing. That was a Star Wars game, wasn't it? It was the X-Wing. I think it was you playing as the Empire. Sonic CD, Thunderhawk, Excellent Forces, Night Trap. Yeah, these are kind of the sort of mid-generation Mega CD games. There was some really interesting stuff coming out at the end of the year on the hardware, particularly from Core Design, like Soulstar and Battlecore. Most Wanted, Alien vs Predator on the Jaguar. Now that was a good game. I bought the machine because of that. I saw it on Games Master and I thought I really, really want that machine. And I bought it at the end of '94. So this would have been when the hype was starting for it. So Super Famicom, Dragon Ball Z2, Dragon's Quest 1 and 2. Got that. I got that on an import. It's not very expensive. It's all in Japanese. Another game that I want to play in Japanese, but I don't know enough the language to really get through an RPG. Super Puyo Puyo, good game. Fatal Fury 2, save your money and go for the Fatal Fury Special, which is around the corner. Guy's Illusion, that was Illusion of Guy they call it, that came out on PAL. I've got that one, it's a good game. I played it for a while though. Mega Drive Japan, Phantasy Star 4 and Shining Force 2, of course, they're really big deal games. Sonic CD, okay, the group Mega Drive CD. Columns 3, which we never got, came out in the US. Don't know what happened to Columns 2. Aladdin. Right, pre-screen, so what have we got? This would have been Z-Wolf on, it was the Archimedes, wasn't it? The Acorn Archimedes. That was a really well-known game on the platform back in the day, and it's held in very high regard over the years. Yeah, you hear a lot of Archimedes fans talking about that. I don't recall if that ever got ported to the Amiga or not. Virtual Racing on the Mega Drive. What's this? Twisted. Who did a video of that recently? I think it's either Infected Flinch or it might have been Steve Benway. Don't remember. I think it was about 6 months or a year ago. Doom. It's interesting they call it Doom Evil Unleashed, but everyone just called it Doom now. Ridge Racer and 28, what's that? John Madden. That looks semi 3D, so it's probably the 3D version. Yeah, Twisted. It's like a game show, but lots and lots of F&V. Yeah, so there's no reviews, are there, because it's pre-screen. Ridge Racer. Now this is the arcade machine, and I remember seeing this one. They had the car. I don't think there was a booth. I think it was just the car in Scarborough, and it was in the Olympia on the 3rd floor, and they had that for years and years. It was up until mid 2000s when it went. I mean, it might still be there, but yeah, that was fun to play. Dig Dug, yeah, of course, all the Namco games. I mean, this looks so good back in the day, and even now, if you go to places like Play and Revival, these machines are always being used. Yeah. So I think the key thing is they're saying it's superior than Virtua Racing and giving Daytona a run for its money. I would say that's fair. It was about the same as Daytona. It's just the console version looked really, really nice, whereas Daytona, I think, was rushed a bit because of the launch date. The sound was certainly capable. It's just, I think it was rushed. Stunt Race Effects. This, back in the day, I remember playing this and being really impressed by it, because not only is it polygonal like Virtual Racing on the Mega Drive, but you got little bits of texture mapping in places, and you didn't see that on Virtual Racing. The problem now when you play it, and I've got this on PAL, Super Nintendo, and a game called Wild Tracks, which is the Japanese version on the Super Famicom, which plays at 60 frames, or no, 60 hertz. It's really choppy, and it's like 20 frames a second maximum, and I think that's where this is dated a little bit. I don't know if it's possible to run this in an emulator and update the clock speed or not. Yeah, so it's saying Stunt Race Effects is the first game to house a new and improved Mario chip, the correct name for the Super FX chip, running 30% faster. I don't think that ever happened. I'm fairly sure this was the Super FX 1, not the Super FX 2. Because the Super FX 2 got used in Winter Gold, Doom and Yoshi's Island, and it's a real shame it didn't get used for this, because that little bit more power, I think it was about twice the clock speed, this probably would have been about 30 frames a second, which would have really made it date better. But it's a good game, it's a fun game, it's just you've got to let your eyes tune into the low frame rate. Super Metroid. Yeah. I remember seeing this advertised when it first came out and looking at the graphics and not being impressed, because it uses this very, even at the time, a very retro style in that you can't really see from these screenshots, but you can see the blocks, whereas games like Sonic or Turrican or any nice looking 16-bit game would hide the little tiles, the little blocks, but Metroid deliberately designed the graphics to show them. And I remember seeing it thinking that looks really dated, and then I played this game in probably '96. It was just before I got rid of the Super Nintendo, and I was so impressed by it. Really, really impressed with this game. I would say that's my favourite in the series, and it's amazing that it came out so late, because this is coming out in March '94 in Japan, so I don't know when we got it. Was it '95 even? Subterranea. Yeah, this is a good game on the Mega Drive. I always thought this was an Amiga conversion, but I don't think it was. The art style's very Amiga-like. It's almost a bit like Lemmings in the way that the backgrounds are drawn, so I don't know if there was an artist that changed companies. I'm not sure. It certainly wasn't made by Psygnosis or DMA Design. And Ryan Off-Road, this was Off-World Interceptor. Yeah, so this is using a similar graphics technique to, as I mentioned, with Total Eclipse? Forget the name of it now. Too early in the morning. Yeah, so what happened on this, you're driving forward, so the camera doesn't really rotate, so it can, the 3DO doesn't need as much information in there, and it can play tricks with the field of vision, so you don't have to render too far ahead or to the sides. The Horde, yeah, that looks like a nice looking 2D game. I don't know what it's like. Never played that one. It's similar to Fairy Tale Adventure. That was an Amiga and Mega Drive game. Okay, I wonder if it's like an advanced port of that. John Madden Football. Yeah, it's another 3D game. It looks a bit like Mode 7, although I suspect that these background bits are probably 3D. Yeah, that was quite common with a lot of 3DO games, even Road Rash, Need for Speed, the Crystal Dynamic games, so Total Eclipse, Off-World Interceptor, and it looks like this. The camera never rotates. You're always behind the player. It can never do a rotation, even on Need for Speed. If you try and spin the car around, it kicks you out of first person view and spins the car and then puts you back in, so you can never look behind or to the side. But yeah, I mean, this is pretty good. It's games like this and FIFA 96 really were the experiments for where the series would go in the future with the 32-bit machines, like the 32-bit machines, the Saturn and the PlayStation. So a bit of video there as well. John Madden, Doom. Yeah, this was such a big deal on the PC because it was shareware as well, so you could download the first episode for free. And I remember buying this in, it was Game Zone in Meadow Hall, and it came in this weird little box. I've still got it at home, and it's a little cardboard box, and it was just so small compared to like your big box PC and Amiga games. And I thought Doom would come in this massive box, and it's not. It's tiny, and it came on 3-4 floppy disks. Yeah. So to describe Doom as first-person perspective action adventure would be like calling Blade Runner a film about robots. Yeah. And a bit of a right relief, here's the new version of the prequel on the SNES. Yeah, that was quite an impressive port. It's interesting here that a lot of magazines will refer to, and it's not just Edge, Doom as being the sequel to Wolfenstein. I'm not sure how well known Wolfenstein really was, unless you had a PC. I think on consoles it wasn't very well known, and I think Doom really came by surprise and got a lot of people's attention. So it really makes sense to try and port a lot of the Wolfenstein to machines like the SNES and the Jaguar, probably the 3DO as well. Virtua Racing Mega Drive. Yeah, this was a good game. I like this one out of all the home versions. I think it's just because of the sensation of speed, because it's just so fast. Again, the frame rate is about 20-25 frames a second on a good day. But because it's so fast, you don't seem to notice it as much. And the gameplay's really, really odd on this version. It's simplified quite a bit, but it still feels like Virtua Racing. So the comparing here, this SVP, so I've mentioned this many times before, the Virtua Racing had a chip called the SVP, which was the Sega Virtual Processor, which was Sega's answer to the Super FX chip, and it was a DSP, digital signal processor, and it would render 3D polygons into a frame buffer, and then the frame buffer would be picked up by the Mega Drive through the cartridge port and then displayed on the screen, and then the Mega Drive displays all the 2D bits on top of it, which is what you'd see when you tried to use an emulator in the mid-2000s, which didn't support this at the time. For the longest time you couldn't play this on an emulator, but you can now. So they're comparing it, operating speed 10 megahertz, 23, 8 by 8 bits per cycle, 16 by 4 cycles. Okay, yeah, that's the multiplication speed, because you're doing lots of 3D geometry, matrix operations, so floating point stuff is important. Don't know if that does float, so whether it's integer, don't know, must be float. No division function, software operated at 32 cycles, included estimated at 16 cycles, polygons a second, 100 to 120, and the Mega Drive one is 300 to 500. Now, yeah, 500 per second, then you've got to divide that up. So if you think of like 100 on the Super FX, if you divide that by like 10, so it's like 10 frames a second, you're doing 10 polygons, which isn't great. So you see here these numbers seem quite big, but once you divide it up, and if you start doing 60 frames a second, you're dividing that number by 60. So clearly these were never going to run at a decent frame rate unless you had very few polygons on the screen. Yeah, the same 8-bit, 16-bit, whatever. I think people stopped caring about that too much with the Jaguar. But yeah, it's, you know, technically it's a masterpiece on the Mega Drive. It's impressive. Right, Binary Asylum. So this was Z-Wolf on the Acorn Archimedes, I'm saying this, but I haven't read it. Oh, here we go. Binary Song, Zeewolf, Amiga and Atari. Am I talking rubbish? This looks like a game that was on the Acorn. Yeah, I mean it looks nice. It's these kind of polygons, and you've got this limited play area. Yeah, I've never actually played this game. Yeah, Virus. They're saying that. Here we go. The more observant will notice that Zeewolf bears more than a passing resemblance to David Braben's Virus, but that's where the similarity ends. Saying it's not a rip-off, and this perspective is essentially very similar, but it's a different game. Maybe that was the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, the Zeewolf is running at 32 colours at 17 frames a second, and the entire polygon engine takes up only 100,000 lines of code, which for those machines is pretty big. It's pretty big actually. Leaving plenty of room for everything else. Yeah, it's unusual to have a game on the Amiga running at 32 colours, 17 frames a second. Must be doing some tricks with the hardware to get that colour depth out of it, but that's still pretty impressive. Oops, don't want to rotate that too much. Yeah, it's nice to see this coming out in the ST as well. Yeah, so I've obviously been talking nonsense there, so this wasn't the Acorn game. That's interesting. There's like a sphere there. I wonder if that's been drawn using some other technique, because I don't think that's polygons. It's too smooth. You wouldn't get enough polygons to do that. 3D games in another dimension. Yeah, so it's saying more games are moving into these ultra realistic 3D settings. Ridge Racer, Virtua Fighter, Total Eclipse, Doom, and Nintendo's Project Reality. Yeah, so they're saying how would these games work in 3D? And I'm immediately thinking of games like Pandemonium. Yeah, it was Pandemonium that was side-scrolling, and it was Crash Bandicoot that was into the screen, but still they were limited in like where you can move the camera. Whereas your Mario was like full 3D. Even Knights wasn't properly. It was 3D, but you didn't have 3D control in that game. Yeah, so you got your first-person shooter games. Forgotten Castle. That looks really quite similar to the original Elder Scrolls game. Ultima Underworld. Yeah, that was impressive for the time. That came out before Doom, if I remember correctly. And it had texture mapped ceilings and floors. 7 guests, so FMV style. Then you got your flat shaded polygons. Robocop 3 on, that's either the ST or the Amiga. That was a good game. I had it on the ST. Out of This World, or Another World, depending on where you are. Alone in the Dark, and Virtua Fighter. Yeah, this is interesting. This character wasn't on the final game. He got replaced with Akira, but he was on Fights Megamix as like a bonus character. Oh yeah, they're talking about voxels that come up now and again, and talking about hard driving and Frontier Elite. So what other 3D have we got? Yeah, Virtua Racing, and Stunt Car Racer. That's it. Yeah, that was very popular on the home computers, ST and Amiga. But that looks so good. Then you got your flight sims. Now this Comanche, this looked really nice. This used voxels, which is a different graphics technique. So it's not really using, well, it's not using polygons at all. This is more like Doom in the way that it works. But that looks so nice. I mean, if you were to render that with polygons, that would take a lot of polygons, particularly in the distance, because as you get further away, your viewing angle is kind of like that. So you need more polygons as it's getting wider and wider in the distance. So that's impressive. Yeah, so it's explaining here how it's done. Yeah, so it's talking about how it's multiplied. I did have a go a few years ago at writing one of those engines, but it runs fine on modern hardware. It's just you can get away with polygons now. Yeah, Virus. That's the one. That's the one I was thinking of in Z-Wolf. They look so similar. And Conqueror. Where did you learn to fly? Yeah, so you got Star Fox, Cyber Race. Never played that one. Yeah, you can tell that's a voxel engine by the shading and pixelation on it. Total Eclipse. Yeah, so it's a good example of games played on the rails where player movements are restricted. Simpler to code since you don't continuously have to keep track of every object in the game world. Yeah, that's not really true. That's not the reason why. It's there to an extent, because once you pass something you can discard it, a lot like your 16-bit platformer games. But I don't think that's the real reason. It's more to do with how many polygons you're rendering. Cybermorph as well in the Jaguar. Now this was impressive when I first saw it. I remember seeing these shaded polygons. Are they Guro shading? They might be. It's hard to tell. I haven't played this for so long. But that game really is quite limited, and the draw distance isn't great. Frame rate's not bad, not bad. 3D graphics workstation, so this is a lot of your pre-rendered stuff. And really, the sky's the limit. Rise of the Robots. You know you can render whatever you want as long as you've got enough memory in the hardware and you've got enough time to render it. But I think FMV got used later on. It got used well. I mean, it's still used even now. The trick is often to reuse the assets from the game and render certain scenes that you either wouldn't be able to load in quick enough or wouldn't be able to display like enough draw distance, which is what gets used now on games, rather than it being a lot of very different looking, very kind of plasticky looking CGI. I think games like Final Fantasy used it well with their anime style, but I think it can look quite bad if done wrong. But this is assuming pre-rendered stuff, not video. Yeah, so we're looking at the story so far. Now this one's interesting. This is a full motion video card. So this was used for playing back MPEG-1 video, which was used. It was really like a precursor to DVD. So these were your video CDs that were MPEG-1 encoded, and at that point machines couldn't really decode MPEG-1 at a decent frame rate, so you needed extra hardware. But the problem there was a lot of games wouldn't use it because you had to have this extra hardware. Whereas the CDI, there were quite a lot of games where you had to have the FMV card for the platform, which is why the FMV on the CDI looks really nice despite not having a great CPU. Yeah, so they're talking about MPEG-2 compression. This is DVD. This is really where this went, because MPEG-2 came out in '94 and DVDs appeared in '98 or so. Yeah, it's a lot more efficient as MPEG-2. Yeah, Lawnmower Man. Remember that on the Mega CD. Very hard to get hold of game. It got recalled because the language setting was set to US, not UK. But the demo got included on Mega Power magazine, so there will be discs floating around that you can play on PAL machines, at least of the demo. Yeah. Yeah, your video CD, Star Trek 6. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing with video compression. I think people are more familiar with it now. You got to compress it, otherwise you get gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes, which obviously won't fit on a CD. Yeah, that's the Philips CDI card cartridge thing. Yeah, so lots more. So this would be a PC board, which would quickly become redundant because a lot of video cards, particularly the 3D accelerators, would often have hardware for decoding MPEG 1. I don't remember if the Voodoo did. That's the one we had. I can't recall if it was just the hardware was faster or whether it had that in. So we had a Pentium 200 MMX, which was pretty good at video decoding. I don't know if it was on either the 3D hardware video card or whether it was on the CPU, to be honest, but I don't think it mattered at that point. So about 1996. Test screen. Okay, so these are the reviews. Raiden on the Jaguar. They didn't like it. Now this was a game that I remember seeing and passing up lots and lots of times back in the day, thinking, this doesn't look like a Jaguar game, this looks like a 16-bit game, and then realising that it's really good. This isn't meant to be the best home port of the game, but it's meant to be pretty good. Yeah, they're obviously comparing it to games like Doom and Alien vs Predator. That's worth picking up now, it's quite expensive. Total Eclipse. Yeah, as you can see, lots of tunnels, fairly short draw distance. It's kind of like a height map in a way, in the way it's drawn. Infected Flinch did a video of that a few months back. That was quite entertaining. On the Saturn, I think it's the Saturn version. What did they give it? I can't see a review. Is it on the next page? Yeah. Have my hand over it. 7 out of 10. Which, yeah, given the hardware and the era and time this came out, it was pretty good. Bomberman 94. Now, this was the PC Engine version. I'm trying to remember which one became Mega Bomberman. It may have been this one, Bomberman 94. I think this is the one that got converted to the Mega Drive as Mega Bomberman, because you get the little kangaroo things in it. Jowies, I think they call them. There we go. Really small. Yeah, the Jowies. That's a fantastic game. I've got this on the Mega Drive. It's really, really good, particularly in multiplayer. Single player, it's a little bit of an odd game because they put these. They tried to mix the formula up a little bit, but it's a fun game, really good. Ganbare Goemon. This didn't come out over here. The first one came out in the UK. They might have come out in the US, I'm not sure. But these are good games. These are good games. I've done a few gameplays of these. I've got them on the Super Famicom, and all of them are really, really good games. 9 out of 10. So yeah, it's just showing that this Super Famicom, Super Nintendo, there's still some life in it. Yeah, Night Trap on the 3DO. Yeah, this would be probably the one to play because the 3DO had a lot better video playback. So what did they say? Early adopters will state it's a great game. Yeah, that it's not a very good game. Yeah, they're saying it was never really a brilliant game on the Mega CD. I didn't like this game. I've played it a couple of times. It had its notorious reputation, and it's kind of fun and cheesy for the video, but for the game, it's just frustrating. I'm sure if you really get into it, there's a trick to playing it, but I just found it a bit boring. Bethesda with Delta V? Is it Delta V? That looks really good. Looks really high resolution from the screenshots, but I wonder if that's not in game. Don't know. Never really heard of that. Heard of this one. I've mentioned this, I think, every magazine I've covered in the last like 4 issues. Ground Zero Texas. It's great. And I really should do a video on this at some point. One of your cheesy B-movie monsters. Yeah, I won't dwell on this. It's really good. It's a really good game. For the Mega CD. Mortal Kombat 2 coin-op, so this would come out on the consoles fairly quickly. It was certainly out by Christmas. The Super Nintendo version did have blood in it. I think Nintendo realised that censoring the first game wasn't a good idea. Yeah, there were a few more characters than this. I think out of all of them, I preferred this one. The third one didn't, I don't know, it just didn't feel like it was doing too much new, and there were a few silly bits in it. And I think the fatalities on this were kind of gory and satisfying as a teenager, but not too silly. Whereas I think after that they weren't quite as much fun. Fatal Fury Special, this is the one. It's like a special version of Fatal Fury 2. Just plays a bit better, and particularly on the Super Famicom, it's a really nice game. A lot of the Neo Geo games didn't translate too well to the 16-bit consoles, but that one did. Yeah. I mean, if you like your Fatal Fury games, I'm sure you've already played this. As the series went on, it got more and more slick. I think the first one was a little bit clunky compared to Street Fighter 2, but certainly by the time this came out, and then your King of Fighters games, they were really, really slick. So 8 out of 10, well deserved. PC Gamer, be afraid of what? Microcosm, Iron Helix, Critical Path. FMV Games, maybe. Volume 1, number 3. Yeah, quite an old issue then. So this would have started the end of 93, beginning of 94. Voyeur, this is another CDI game, and another one that Infected Flinch has covered. Yeah, I remember this being quite notorious back in the day, and there were a lot of adverts for it. And I don't know how this game actually plays, whether it's well, good or bad from the gameplay. I think it'll be really, really cheesy and probably fun, but I don't know if it'll, have a lot of lastability. Maybe. Alone in the Dark 2. Yeah, this one came out on the PC and then came out on the Saturn. Don't know if there's a PlayStation 1 version of this. It's considered a bit different than the others in the series. Some people like it, some people don't. It moves out of the haunted house scenario into something a bit different. And yeah, I think it didn't do too well on the consoles. They gave it 9 out of 10 though, so it's obviously is a good game. I've never played it. It's only the first one I've ever played. But certainly when it came out on the consoles, I don't think the reviews were that good. I think that's what put me off it. Recommended reading: Superplay, Konos, Doloros, covered a lot of issues of that. Game Zone, yeah, don't think anyone's done any of those. Sega Power, Games Master, Gruss Newton's done a whole series of those. Mega, Total, PC Gamer. Yeah, these were all from the same publisher. So you won't see CVG and you won't see Mean Machines in there, because those were EMAP. I like the Jimmy White games. I thought they were really good. Yeah, I don't know how well this text will come up. I'm not going to read the whole thing. So he's talking about programming. He says, they use libraries to make it easier to access certain effects. More to do with the techniques. Yeah, it's something a programmer would have to spend 11 or 12 months of the year pushing the code to its ultimate speed to do. Now the hardware just does it automatically. Yeah, so I think this is talking about new hardware and having good development kits to, they call it time to polys. So the idea is when you get a new console, it's how long does it take to get the polygons and the graphics on the screen, and that could take a year. And I think this was a limitation, like the PS2, the PS3, it took them a lot longer to get the 3D working. There have been a few console post-mortems, particularly with the launch of the PS4. There was a few developer talks that talked about that, but they're all available on YouTube. Yeah, so he's obviously impressed with the new hardware. It says 50% of developers go for CD stuff, and CD has vast potential for certain things, but people have to change game design. It's saying no one, as far as I can see, has come up with a game yet that uses the CD system and limitations properly. I don't know, I think your LucasArts adventure games were a good example, that they use the CD really just for more data for voice and audio. Is it hard to see how a single person could develop software for such a beast? Yeah, you need bigger teams. So yeah, I think he was right on the money here. So utilities. Nowadays, if you wanted, you could design a snooker table in a 3D package in 10 minutes. So 3D packages. Now people use things like Maya to do a lot of 3D. What got you into 3D? Yeah, what do you use and what do you develop? Amiga ST, done on a PC. Yeah, interesting stuff. I should go back and read that. I mean, a lot of these magazines have been scanned on places like Internet Archive, so you'll be able to find those. Yeah, get your Edge subscriptions. So what jobs? Programmers, animators, 3D programmers. Yeah, 3D programmers, you need to know your maths really well to be able to do your rotations and quaternions and all your matrix stuff. Letters coming towards the end now. Yeah, 3D object, PSX obviously didn't look like that. Yeah, nice machines here. CD32. Now, this one here is the FM Towns Marty. Internally, it has a 386. It was a lot like a PC inside. I think the video hardware was custom, but it certainly used a 386. So this was a Japanese machine. As was this. This was the it's the Turbo Duo, which is the PC engine with a built-in CD drive. And I think it had the extra memory, so you didn't have to insert the, wasn't the arcade card, was it? It was the, there were a few different Hue cards that came out. There was like the CD-ROM system 2, and then you got the arcade one, which had a lot more memory on it, but it comes with one of them built in. I forget which one it is, the CDI. Yeah, both of those, particularly that one's really collectible. Problem with the Turbo Duo is there are a lot of capacitor problems, particularly that model. That's the earlier model. It's the Duo R, if I remember correctly, which has good capacitors in. But you can get quite a lot of these on eBay now that are broken, which is not ideal. It's normally the sound that goes. Grand Zero text on the Mega CD does that thanks to the millions of dollars that have been spent filming action sequences that actually make the game any better. I'm not sure if Ground Zero Texas was an arcade game originally that got converted. It was digital pictures, which I think were entirely console, if I remember correctly, so it probably wasn't an arcade game. It's a shame really, because that would have been quite fun, playing an arcade. Yeah, Amiga 4000, 1850 for the 68040 CPU. That would have been a nice CPU. You could play Port of Doom on that. So I've got 030 and it kind of plays Doom on a small window, but that would have been brilliant. Yeah, they got quite hot, the 4 hours. You needed a fan on them. Jaguar. How good is the UK Jaguar? Yeah, I don't think there are any import restrictions on the Jag, if I remember correctly. Yeah, CDI can't keep up with new technology. Yeah, the CDI was really a video player. It was a video CD player with some interactive features that kind of became a games console, but I don't think that's what it was really intended for. And I think when it was sold, I remember it being sold more like high-end hi-fi equipment rather than your games consoles, and that was certainly true for the Amiga CD TV. If I remember correctly, there was a thing that places like Comet and Curry's were not allowed to display a CD TV within so many feet of the normal Amigas. It was so that they were classified as different equipment. But that's the one you want, the CD32. That's a nice little machine, and it can be forced to play a few WHD load games, so you can play a lot of standard Amiga games. It's just it doesn't have a keyboard unless you've got an SX1 add-on. Yep, so your back issues, not very many of them. So I've covered those two. Yeah, more to come. Yeah, so that's it. So hope you enjoyed that. Quite a long video. It's been ages since I've done one of these. It was way before Christmas. So yeah, there's a lot more to come, and it'll be nice to get back on the horse and do some more of these. So thanks for watching.